The city streets were alive that evening. Bright neon signs flickered above small restaurants, the honk of taxis echoed, and the cool breeze carried the smell of roasted corn and fried chicken from a food stand nearby. Daniel, a hardworking single father, had just finished his long shift at a construction site. His boots were dusty, his shoulders heavy with fatigue, but when his little girl Emma tugged at his hand and pointed toward the food stand, his heart softened. "Daddy, can we eat here tonight, please?" she asked, her eyes glowing with innocent excitement. Daniel chuckled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "All right, sweetheart, just tonight. It'll be our treat." He ordered a small sandwich and a hot drink for both of them, the kind of meal that wasn't fancy, but to Emma it felt like a feast. They found an empty bench nearby. Emma swung her little legs back and forth as she took careful bites of her sandwich, humming happily. Daniel watched her with quiet pride. He didn't have much to offer her, just a modest home, simple meals, and endless love. But Emma never complained. She always found joy in the little things. But then Emma's cheerful eyes drifted away from her food. Across the street, near a trash bin, stood a thin little girl. Her clothes were ragged, her hair messy, and her bare hands trembled in the chilly air. She wasn't begging or asking anyone for help. She just stood still, her gaze locked on the food Emma held in her hands. Emma stopped chewing. She put her sandwich down on the paper wrapper and gently tugged on her father's sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice soft but urgent. "She looks hungry." Daniel followed his daughter's gaze and saw the girl. His chest tightened. The sight of her, lonely, cold, and clearly starving, was heartbreaking. "Can I share my food with her?" Emma asked, her small voice trembling. Daniel looked at his daughter, astonished by her compassion. They didn't have much money themselves. In fact, this sandwich was supposed to be Emma's little treat after a long week of saving, but his daughter wasn't thinking about herself. She was thinking about the girl with empty eyes. Daniel's heart wavered. He knew what it felt like to struggle. He knew the pain of having to choose between meals and bills. He wanted to help. But what if Emma stayed hungry tonight? Emma tilted her head, her eyes pleading with the kind of innocence only a child could carry. "Please, Daddy," Daniel sighed, torn between logic and love. But before he could answer, Emma stood up, sandwich in hand. Her tiny feet carried her across the street toward the girl. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. "Emma, wait," he called, but she didn't stop. She approached the girl carefully, like a gentle friend. Holding out the half-eaten sandwich, she smiled shyly. "Hi," Emma said softly. "You can have mine. I'm not that hungry anymore." The homeless girl froze, her eyes darting between the sandwich and Emma's face. She hesitated, almost as if she wasn't sure if it was real. Slowly, her trembling hands reached out and took the sandwich. Tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered, "Thank you." Emma grinned, her innocence shining through. She sat beside the girl as if they had always known each other. "What's your name?" she asked cheerfully. The girl sniffled. "Lily." Emma's smile widened. "I'm Emma. We can be friends now." Daniel stood frozen for a moment, watching the scene unfold. His throat tightened. In all his years of trying to teach Emma about kindness, it was she who was now teaching him. Daniel finally walked over, his heart heavy with emotions. He crouched down, looking at the girl more closely. She was no older than Emma, maybe 7 or 8. Dirt smudged her cheeks, and her clothes were worn thin. "Hey there," he said gently. "Are you out here alone?" Lily lowered her eyes and nodded slightly. "My mom. She got sick. She couldn't take care of me anymore. I just come here sometimes because it smells nice." Daniel's chest ached. He had faced hard times himself, but at least Emma always had him. This little girl had no one. Emma held Lily's hand tightly. "Don't be sad. Daddy can help, right, Daddy?" Daniel swallowed hard. He didn't have the money to do much, but how could he turn away? He took a deep breath and nodded. "Of course, we'll figure something out." He went back to the food stand and bought another meal with the last few dollars in his wallet. When he returned, he placed it gently in Lily's lap. "Eat," he said softly. "You deserve it." Lily's eyes filled with tears again as she bit into the food. Every bite seemed to bring her back to life. Emma leaned against her father, whispering, "See, Daddy, she's smiling now." Daniel looked at his daughter, realizing she was right. In that moment, he understood that true richness didn't come from money. It came from compassion. His daughter's heart was far richer than any wall it could ever be. When Lily finished eating, she looked up at Daniel and Emma, her lips trembling. "Thank you. No one's ever done this for me before." Daniel knelt beside her. "You're not alone anymore, Lily. People still care. Don't ever forget that." Emma hugged Lily tightly, her little voice full of warmth. "We're friends now, and friends always share." The three of them sat there for a while, the city rushing around them, strangers passing by without noticing. But in that small corner of the world, something extraordinary had happened. A child's simple act of kindness had bridged the gap between despair and hope, between loneliness and love. As they walked home that night, Daniel held Emma's hand tighter than ever. He realized she had given him more than just a lesson. She had reminded him of what truly mattered. The narrator's voice closes. Sometimes it isn't the grand gestures that change the world. Sometimes it's a little girl sharing her food, because kindness, no matter how small, feeds more than just an empty stomach. It feeds the soul, and that's how humanity survives. At the end of that evening, Daniel realized something profound. Life's true wealth is not measured in the size of our wallets, but in the size of our hearts. Emma's simple act of kindness fed more than just Lily's hunger. It restored hope, reminded them all that compassion still exists, and proved that even the smallest hands can make the biggest difference. Sometimes the world doesn't need heroes with capes. It just needs a child willing to share her sandwich, a father willing to listen, and a stranger willing to believe again. Because kindness doesn't just change one moment, it changes lives. And that night, on a busy street corner, a little girl's innocent words, "Daddy, she looks hungry. Can I share my food with her?" became the spark of humanity the world desperately needs.